In a small town nestled between gentle hills and a river that shimmered like liquid glass, there lived a young man named Arif. Life had not been kind to him lately. Once a promising student of architecture, Arif's dreams had crumbled under the weight of his father's sudden death and the debts that followed. He had left his university halfway through and returned home to support his mother and little sister, working as a laborer on construction sites. The hands that once held pencils and drafted buildings now carried bricks and cement, roughened and blistered by hardship. Every morning, he would wake before dawn, his back already aching from yesterday's toil, yet he forced a smile for his mother, who hid her tears behind the steaming cups of tea she served him. His little sister, Sana, always hugged him before he left. "You'll build again one day, Bai," she'd whisper, her eyes filled with faith he couldn't feel anymore. The days rolled into each other, long, sun-scorched, and heavy. Arif had begun to believe that hope was a luxury he could no longer afford. Yet fate has a strange way of bending itself toward moments that seem small but carry the power to change everything. It was one such morning when the incident happened. The sky was gray, promising rain, and the foreman was pushing everyone to hurry. The site was muddy, slippery, and chaotic. Arif worked silently, his muscles moving from habit rather than hope, when suddenly, a loud crack pierced the noise. A wooden scaffold gave way. A young boy, no more than 15, working nearby, lost his footing. Time slowed. The boy's scream ripped through the air as he fell. Without thinking, Arif threw down the bricks he was carrying and lunged forward. His boots skidded in the mud, but his hands caught the boy's arm just in time. The boy dangled, terrified, over the open pit below, 10 feet deep and lined with jagged rods. Arif's heart pounded as he strained to pull him up, his muscles screaming under the weight. For a moment, it seemed he might not make it. But then, another worker grabbed Arif's shoulder, and together, they hauled the boy to safety. The boy clung to Arif, trembling. His name was Imran. He had only been working there for a week to help his family. "You saved me," he whispered through tears. Arif just nodded, too shaken to speak. That night, after the rain had stopped, Arif sat outside his small house, staring at his hands. They were calloused and dirty, but he kept seeing that moment, Imran's terrified eyes and the weight of another life in his grasp. For the first time in a long while, he felt something spark deep inside him, not pride, but a realization. His hands, though scarred and worn, still held power. The power to build, to protect, to lift. Days passed, and the story of Arif's quick act spread quietly among the workers. Imran, still shaken, visited him often. He followed Arif like a shadow, asking questions about construction, buildings, and blueprints. Arif would smile faintly and show him how the site worked, how foundation lines were marked, how balance and structure mattered. "You should study," Arif told him one day. "You're smart. You could build things with your mind, not just your hands." Imran looked down. "I can't afford school." The words hit Arif like an echo of his own life. That night, he made a decision. He took part of his savings, small, barely enough to matter, and handed it to Imran's mother the next morning. "For his education," he said simply. She protested, tears in her eyes, but Arif just smiled. "Maybe one day he'll build the house I could never design." Months went by. The construction site finished its project, and Arif moved to another city for work. The days turned into years, each one carrying him deeper into the rhythm of survival. He built towers, bridges, and roads, but inside, he carried an emptiness, the dream of architecture buried beneath duty. One day, while working on a large project in the city, Arif received a letter. It was worn from travel and written in careful handwriting. "Dear Bai Arif, you may not remember me easily, but I'll never forget you. I am Imran, the boy you saved that rainy day. I'm writing from Lahore, where I've just graduated in architecture. It was your kindness that started it all. You told me I could build things with my mind. I believed you. I wanted to tell you that I'm dedicating my first project to you, the men who lifted hope, not just me, but the future I could not see. Please come to the opening ceremony if you can. You must. It would mean the world to me. With respect. Imran." Arif read the letter twice, his eyes stinging. He sat down, his hands trembling. The memory of that day flashed again, the muddy ground, the scream, the reach. A single act, one instinctive decision, had changed not just Imran's life, but somehow, his own. He took the first train to Lahore. It had been years since he had traveled anywhere other than from site to site. As the city came into view, gleaming and restless, his heart pounded with an emotion he couldn't name. The ceremony was small but beautiful. The building stood tall, a community learning center for underprivileged children, designed with elegant simplicity. On its front wall, near the entrance, was a plaque. Arif's eyes froze when he read the inscription. Dedicated to the men whose hand lifted hope. Imran spotted him in the crowd. Now a confident young architect, he ran up and hugged Arif tightly. "You came," he said, his eyes shining. "How could I not?" Arif replied, smiling through tears. They stood together, watching the children running around the courtyard, laughing, their voices echoing against the new walls. The center was meant to give them free education and skill training, a place where hope could find roots. "You did this," Arif said quietly. Imran shook his head. "No, Bai. We did this. Your kindness gave me a future. I just passed it on." For the rest of the day, Arif wandered through the building, his hand brushing against the smooth walls. He noticed every line, every angle, every curve. They weren't perfect, but they were alive, filled with meaning. And for the first time in years, he felt proud, not of surviving, but of living. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Imran asked him, "Do you still design, Bai?" Arif hesitated. "Not for a long time." Imran smiled. "Then maybe it's time you start again. The world needs your hands, not just to lift bricks, but to lift dreams." Something in those words struck deep. Arif stayed in Lahore for a while, helping at the center. Slowly, he began sketching again, first shyly, then passionately. Imran would bring him paper and pencils, urging him to show the children how buildings began as dreams on a page. The children loved it. They would gather around him as he drew houses, schools, and bridges, their eyes wide with curiosity. He taught them how imagination could turn into something solid, how hands could shape hope if guided by kindness and purpose. Months turned into a year. Arif, with Imran's encouragement, applied for a certification course in architectural design. His age and background made him doubt himself, but Imran wouldn't let him give up. "You taught me to believe," he said. "Now it's my turn to remind you." When Arif received his acceptance letter, he couldn't stop smiling. His mother wept with joy when he called her. Sana, now grown and studying nursing, said, "I told you, Bai, you'd build again one day." Years later, Arif became known as a community architect. He didn't design skyscrapers or luxurious villas. Instead, he built homes for those who had none, schools in forgotten villages, and clinics in the outskirts of cities. Every structure carried his quiet touch, a belief that architecture wasn't just about buildings, but about people. At every groundbreaking ceremony, he remembered that day, the muddy sight, the falling boy, the outstretched hand. One act of instinctive kindness had become the cornerstone of countless lives. One morning, while visiting the learning center that Imran had built years ago, now expanded and thriving, Arif noticed a little boy sitting alone with a broken model of a bridge. The boy looked frustrated. Arif knelt beside him. "It's okay if it broke," he said gently. "You can always build it again. Sometimes the second time, it's even stronger." The boy looked up. "But it keeps falling." Arif smiled softly. "Then I'll help you hold it." He reached out, steadying the bridge with his hands, the same hands that had once lifted a boy from falling into darkness. The child smiled, and together, they rebuilt the model, piece by piece. As they worked, sunlight filtered through the window, lighting up the small plaque on the wall. Arif's eyes glanced at it once more. The men whose hand lifted hope. He smiled to himself, realizing the truth he had carried all along: kindness doesn't just save others, it rebuilds the one who gives it. In that moment, surrounded by laughter, dust, and dreams, Arif finally understood that every act of compassion, no matter how small, sets off a ripple that never ends. The boy beside him didn't know it yet, but one day, he too might lift another, just as Arif once did. And so, hope continued its quiet journey, passed from one hand to another, from one heart to the next, building not just walls or bridges, but lives, one act of kindness at a time.